Your network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, December 13th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. All right, I want to do an update on the story we talked about on um, Tuesday, November 16th. Tuesday, November 16th. And I did a story dealing with African American World War II veterans, and we talked about we discussed how the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans due to racism. Okay, how the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans due to racism, and I talked about new legislation that was being introduced that was aiming to resolve the GI Bill's racial inequities. And it was introduced by Representative Moulton of Massachusetts and Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina. Okay, so that was back on November 16th. So the bill has been introduced, and December 7th, we know, was the 79th anniversary of Pearl Harbor being bombed by the Japanese, and the U.S. entering into World War II. There was a big op-ed article for the um, Time magazine, called "What America Owes Black Veterans of World War II." What America owes Black veterans of World War II. And it dealt with it's an op-ed article written by Representative James Clyburn and Representative Moulton, and it talks about the bill that they introduced. The It's the Sergeant Isaac Woodard Jr. and the Sergeant Joseph H. Maddox GI Restoration Act of 2021. Okay, and this this bill would extend the benefits of the Black GIs. It would extend those benefits to their spouses as well as certain direct descendants. Okay, so I want to do an update on that story because on December 7th there was a segment from Deadline White House with Nicole Wallace, and Representative Seth Moulton was interviewed, and he talked about this bill, but he talked about the discrimination that African American World War II veterans suffered when they came back home. All right, and I saw the segment on Deadline White House, but it's been so busy, and I had to go into the podcast archives of Deadline White House and MSNBC. They didn't upload the video, so I had to go into the podcast archives and find this. But we're going to talk about this on today's show, and I want to talk some about this article, this op-ed article that was written, and we'll talk a little bit about this legislation. What America owes Black World War II veterans. Okay, now also I want to get to this other story, and this deals with the filibuster. Okay, so we know that the fight to get the Freedom to Vote Act passed and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed has intensified. We know there were protests today by Reverend William Barber III, Reverend William Barber II. There were protests around getting the Build Back Better bill passed, as well as the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. Now, there was a interview that Representative James Clyburn did. It was Axios on HBO did an interview with Representative James Clyburn a couple days ago, and he said that he thinks that the Democrats are going to be able to get around the filibuster and get the Voting Rights Act passed in the Senate. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well and deal with some background history of the filibuster. All right, so we'll deal with that, and then we'll get to a story that I did not get a chance to get to on yesterday's show and on our Sunday show, and that deals with the Houston, Texas riot, the Houston Riot of 1917, December 11th, 1917, the Houston Riot. And you had African-American World War I soldiers. This is during World War I. African-American soldiers during World War I who were executed. This is during the Houston Riot, as a result of the Houston Riot. And the Houston Riot started as a fight against police brutality in Houston, Texas. So we'll deal with that today on the African History Network show. Now, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or a woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events, history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, and visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for it there as well. Okay, so I want to jump into this first topic here before we go to break. When we come back from break, Shakita, we're going to clip number one from Ali Velshi, Representative James Clyburn. We're going to clip number one when we come back. Okay, so we talked about this story back on November 16th. And since then, this op-ed article came out from the Time magazine. This was on December 7th, which was the 79th anniversary of the attack on Pearl. Actually, I should say the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. What America owes Black veterans of World War II. What America owes Black veterans of World War II. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, 1.2 million Black servicemen, 1.2 million Black servicemen and women were among 16 million Americans who answered the call to defend our country and protect democracy abroad. The irony of fighting a war to defend democracy in segregated ranks was not lost on them, but they believed in America's promise, and they believed their commitment to the country they loved would pay off. But when they returned home, much of that promise was denied to them. When they returned home, much of that promise was denied to them. And they tell the story of Sergeant Joseph Maddox, who was African-American sergeant in World War II. He was accepted to Harvard University, but there was one problem. He was Black. So the Veterans Affairs Department denied Sergeant Joseph Maddox his GI Bill tuition, quote, to avoid setting a precedent, end quote. We're going to deal with this on the other side of the break. We'll talk about this legislation here that's already been introduced in the House of Representatives. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. Stand by, back from break in 4 minutes. Share this broadcast here on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Stand by. Hold on. Okay, who still needs to register for the online class I teach on Saturdays and Sundays? From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Okay, stand by, back from break in 3 minutes. Okay, you can register for the online courses I teach on Saturdays and Sundays at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. On Saturdays from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And on, hold on, I updated the website. It should refresh. All right. Stand by.
Show we deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, December 13th, 2021, and we are live. All right. Be sure to register for the online courses I teach on Saturdays and Sundays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. That's a 10-week online course that I teach. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. And then on Sundays, I teach ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, where they didn't teach you in school. So they're both on sale right now. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power is on sale $50, regularly $130. Understand the transatlantic slave trades on sale $60, regularly $130. We have a special bundle pack. You can register for both classes for only $70. As soon as you register, you can watch the classes we did this past weekend and the previous classes. You can join us in class this coming weekend. All right, that's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, I want to go back to the article we were dealing with right before the break. So this deals with the, this is a piece from Time Magazine written December 7th, 2021. Okay, the anniversary of the U.S. entering into World War II and Pearl Harbor being bombed. And this article deals with what America owes Black veterans of World War II, what America owes Black veterans of World War II. And it deals with a bill that was introduced by Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts and Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina. Okay, and we talked about this bill. We talked about this bill on our Tuesday, November 16th show. So you can go back and watch that show. It's archived. All right, now, so the name of the bill is named after Sergeant Joseph Maddox and also Sergeant Isaac Woodard. Okay, two African-American World War II veterans. Now, Sergeant Joseph Maddox was accepted at Harvard University, but the problem was he was African-American. Okay, and so the Veterans Affairs Department denied his GI Bill tuition to avoid setting a precedent. Now, Sergeant Isaac Woodard, who we talked about on our November 16th show, you know, he was blinded by a white police officer. He was beaten, and the white police officer stuck his blackjack, his billy club, into Isaac Woodard's eyes and blinded him in both eyes. Sergeant Isaac Woodard, another Black veteran, fared worse. Newly discharged from active duty and still in uniform, Sergeant Woodard was hauled off a bus on the way to his home in South Carolina by a local police chief who beat him and left him blind. Now, Sergeant Maddox and Woodard and thousands of Black soldiers watched as returning white soldiers enjoyed the full benefits of the GI Bill, gaining access to quality universities that led to well-paying jobs, securing loans to buy houses in the suburbs. And the suburbs were newly formed, basically formed after World War II. Okay. And you're going to have the deindustrialization of the inner city after World War II. You have the suburbs being built. And then about 1949, you have the Federal Housing Administration that makes, the Federal Housing Act, that allows white people to put 3% down on low interest loans and buy houses that are being built out in the newly formed suburbs. When we try to take advantage of those loans, we try to take advantage of the GI Bill, etc., we get hit with redlining, we get hit with discrimination, things like this, and we can't take advantage of these programs that our taxpayer dollars are helping to finance. Okay, that our taxpayer dollars are helping to finance. So returning Maddox, Woodard, and thousands of black soldiers watched as returning white soldiers enjoyed the full benefits of the GI Bill, gaining access to quality universities that led to well-paying jobs, securing loans to buy homes in the suburbs with their families, and starting businesses that grew in the post-war economy. Okay, ultimately, white veterans gained substantial wealth. For themselves and their families that has lasted generations. And one of the biggest things contributing to the racial wealth gap, people keep talking about slavery. One of the biggest things in modern times that has contributed to the racial wealth gap was the GI Bill and the discrimination that African Americans suffered when tried to take advantage of the benefits that they earned in the GI Bill. Now, at the same time, discriminatory policies and prejudiced state and local officials barred black families from fully accessing those same benefits. Racially biased lending practices known as redlining, prevented many black veterans from accessing home loans. Segregation and quota systems prohibited many of them from attending well-funded, predominantly white universities. Many black veterans instead went to segregated, underfunded black institutions and vocational schools. These systemic inequities limited their opportunity to accumulate wealth. These systemic inequities limited their opportunity to accumulate wealth. For example, in the summer of 1947, only two of the 3,299 Veteran Affairs guaranteed home loans in 13 Mississippi cities went to African American borrowers, despite African Americans accounting for half of the population in the state of Mississippi. Let me repeat this. In the summer of 1947, okay, World War II ends in 1945. So you got to understand post World War II, because what happened after World War II ended is not just what happened after the Civil War ended, especially World War II, because of government policies, because of redlining policies that were created by the federal government that comes from the Homeowners Loan Corporation, created in 1933, and then redlining is created right about 1937. Discrimination when it came to taking advantage of the Fair Housing Act, the Federal Housing Act, government policy to make low interest loans on homes, and then discrimination when it comes to taking advantage of the GI Bill benefits. The GI Bill gave low interest loans to buy homes, but also start businesses. It wasn't just money to go to school. It was low interest loans to buy homes and to start businesses. We largely got discriminated against when it came to taking advantage of that. Okay, so in Mississippi, in the summer of 1947, only two of the 3,299 Veteran Affairs guaranteed home loans in 13 Mississippi cities went to African American borrowers, despite African Americans accounting for half of the population of the state of Mississippi in 1947. In New York, up north, in New York and the northern New Jersey suburbs, fewer than 100 of the 67,000 mortgages insured by the GI Bill supported purchases by non-white people. In the state of New York and the northern, well, in the city of New York and the northern New Jersey suburbs, fewer than 100 of the, I think they're talking about the state of New York because they ain't say New York City. In New York and the northern New Jersey suburbs, fewer than 100 of the 67,000 mortgages insured by the GI Bill supported home purchases by non-whites. Now, the original GI Bill, which is known as the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, the original GI Bill was a race-neutral bill intended to serve both as a gesture of gratitude and a substantial economic benefit to all of the brave American heroes returning from war. However, African American veterans were systematically shut out from the GI Bill and the prosperity of the post-war period. While the bill on its face did not explicitly exclude Black veterans, its implementation did, and this legacy of discrimination must be addressed. And this is what this bill is seeking to address. Now, okay, we're coming up on a break. When we come back from the break, I want to go back to this clip here from MSNBC we talked about before. Check out the article. Now, there's a really good article from history.com that gives more background information on this. And this is understanding how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth upon resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. And one of the reasons why we study history is so we don't make the same mistakes and we can correct the mistakes that were made previously. To understand these bills that need to be passed, you have to understand the history that these bills address. To understand the bills that need to be written and passed, you have to understand the history that these bills address. Now, this is an excellent article from history.com, and I've done a presentation dealing with this topic before, how the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans. Okay, now history.com is the official website of the History Channel. They are even telling you this, how the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans. The sweeping bill promised prosperity to veterans, so why didn't Black Americans benefit? Okay, so check this out here. We'll continue this on the other side of the break, and then we'll talk about the filibuster as well and the workaround to the filibuster. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, stand by. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. All right. Okay, if you like this type of information, also you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and then through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. And by. Back from break in 3 minutes. All right. Here's the information to register for the online courses that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. We'll post a link here so you can register for the classes. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content. Back from break in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, December 13th, 2021. And we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Okay, so I want to go back to the story we were dealing with right before the break, and this deals with the GI Bill, and this deals with the new bill that was introduced in November, really November 11th, 2021. This is the GI Bill Restoration Act. The GI Bill Restoration Act is named after Sergeant Isaac Woodard Jr. and Sergeant Joseph H. Maddox. Let's go back to the piece here from Time Magazine, time.com. This article is an op-ed written by Representative James Clyburn and Representative Seth Moulton. Okay, Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, 6th Congressional District. Representative James Clyburn, South Carolina, 6th Congressional District, also South Carolina, 6th Congressional District. And this deal, it's the name of this piece is What America Owes Black Veterans of World War II. What America Owes Black Veterans of World War II. Okay, I want to go back to this quickly here. Then we're going to go to this clip from these two clips from MSNBC. Okay, so the original GI Bill, which was known as the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, was a race-neutral bill intended to serve as a gesture of gratitude and a substantial economic benefit to all the brave American heroes returning from home. However, Black veterans were systematically shut out from the GI Bill and the prosperity of the post-war period. While the bill on its face did not explicitly exclude veterans, its implementation did, and this legacy of discrimination must be addressed. Now, the GI Bill remains one of the largest investments America has made in its veterans. It has made in its millions of veterans. It is credited with building out America's expanding middle class and boosting our nation's economy. Two significant ways to build wealth in this country are through education and housing. Through education, basically specifically higher education and housing. Two major pillars of the original GI Bill from which Black veterans and their families were excluded. Okay, education and housing. As it stands today, no progress has been made in reducing income and wealth gaps between Black and white households over the past 70 years. In fact, the net wealth of a typical African-American family in America is around 1/10 that of a typical white family. The simple truth is that America did not keep its promise to all of the greatest generation, and it's time we make it right. Now I want to go to we're going to go to clip one here, Shakita. Now this is from November 14th, 2021. We played this here on the show before. And this is Representative James Clyburn. He's on Ali Velshi's show. But Maria Kumar is sitting in for Ali Velshi. And he Representative James Clyburn is talking about this bill and what happened to Black World War II veterans. Let's go to this clip. Clip number one.
And Congressman, I just want to underscore that the president has often said that we are right now in the battle for our democracy because we are facing an autocratic governance if we do not step up. But I also want to applaud the bill that you just recently introduced, recognizing the efforts of African-American World War II veterans and how their ancestors now will be able to be eligible to receive in the allocations of the GI Bill that before they were not eligible because of the color of their skin. Can you elaborate on that bill you introduced?
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to do that. I have joined with Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts to honor two sergeants. One, Sergeant Maddox from Massachusetts, and Sergeant Isaac Woodard from South Carolina. I think that if people were to look at what happened to these two gentlemen coming back from World War II, having just saved this country from an autocracy, and have be punished, not even allowed to participate in the GI Bill. The GI Bill meant so much to so many people, helping them rebuild their lives. And a lot of people did rebuild their lives as a result of the GI Bill. But these two gentlemen and thousands of others were denied access. Sergeant Woodard was blinded by being in South Carolina while in his uniform. All he was trying to do is be an American. He is the one who gave the incentivized Brown v. Board of Education. If you look at the story of Isaac Woodard, you will see how a federal judge, Ken Waring, here in South Carolina, looked at what happened to him and decided he was no longer going to be a Southern judge. He was going to be an American judge. And these kinds of things need to be rectified. He was the one that incented Harry Truman to intervene the armed services. Harry Truman stated in a letter, when I see something like this, it's got to come to an end. So Sergeant Maddox was denied an education, but all around him could get it in the GI Bill. And so Seth Moulton and I are trying hard to do what is necessary to right that wrong for their children, all their descendants.
You know, Congressman, oftentimes people say wages, representation matter, and you are emblematic of why it's important for Americans to be able to choose their representatives that reflect their values and who they are. So thank you, Congressman, for your work. Jim Clyburn, Democrat from South Carolina.
Okay, so that was, you can stop right there. Okay, so that was from November 14th, Ali Velshi's show on MSNBC. Now, this article here, we talked about this back on our Tuesday, November 16th show. A Black World War II veteran was beaten and blinded, fueling the civil rights movement. This is a piece from the Washington Post. This is about Sergeant Isaac Woodard, a World War II veteran who was beaten by police while he was in uniform. In February 1946, Sergeant Isaac Woodard, a decorated Black soldier, just returning from World War II, rode a Greyhound bus heading home to South Carolina. Woodard had just been honorably discharged from the Army and was still wearing his uniform. Asked the bus driver to stop so that he could use the restroom. The bus driver reluctantly pulled over after calling Sergeant Isaac Woodard, there in his uniform, called him a boy. Woodard, who had just returned from more than 3 years of military service in the Pacific during World War II, stood up for himself and other Black veterans, telling the driver not to talk to him like that. He said, "I'm a man just like you." At the next town, Batesburg, South Carolina, the driver called the police. The Batesburg police chief pulled Sergeant Isaac Woodard, off the bus and immediately began beating him, plunging a blackjack into each of Isaac Woodard's eye sockets and blinding him. He was blinded for life. Okay. Read the rest of this article here. So this bill is partly named after Sergeant Isaac Woodard. Now, I want to go to clip number 2. This is from Deadline White House from December 7th, 2021. Okay, the 80th anniversary of the U.S. getting involved in World War II. Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts talks about introducing this bill, and he talks about Representative James Clyburn, asking James Clyburn to be co-sponsor of this bill to provide GI benefits to descendants of Black World War II veterans. And he talks about how he talked to a number of people about this history, and a number of people didn't know about this history. Let's go to clip 2.
To that, joining us now is Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, a former Marine Corps officer who served in Iraq, as well as a member of the House Armed Services Committee. The piece goes on to say thousands of Black soldiers watched as returning white soldiers enjoyed the full benefits of the GI Bill. At the same time, discriminatory policies and prejudiced state and local officials barred Black families from fully accessing those same benefits. Our generation did not commit this wrong, but we should be committed to making it right. Tell me there isn't anyone who objects to this piece of legislation.
It's such common sense, Nicole. I mean, the GI Bill has been called the most amazing piece of legislation ever, the most successful piece ever. It returns $7 for every $1 invested by the American taxpayer. These veterans came home and built the American century, built the middle class. On this day, December 7th, when we mark the beginning of World War II, we should also remember how it ended and how America took care of all these veterans when they came home, with an exception. And most people don't know, even myself, someone who benefited from the GI Bill. I certainly wouldn't be here as a member of Congress without what the GI Bill did for me.
All right, we'll continue on the other side of the break. Back that up about 30 seconds or so. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Okay. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the classes I teach on the weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We do that 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then also on Sundays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. We have a special bundle pack. You register for both classes for only $70, regularly $130 each. So we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch anytime. Back from break in 3 minutes. All right, stand by. Just because you have white people who are illiterate, that did not mean they couldn't write their name. A lot of them were functionally illiterate, and they could sign their name. Back from break in 2 minutes. Back from break in 1 minute. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. All right, it is, I want to go back to this clip here I was sharing. This is from December 7th, 2021. Deadline White House with Nicole Wallace, Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts is talking about the Sergeant Isaac Woodard Jr. and Sergeant Joseph H. Maddox GI Restoration Act of 2021. Let's go back to this clip.
No idea that thousands, hundreds of thousands of black veterans were left out, were left behind. And it's high time we fix this injustice. That's why I wrote the bill.
So where does it stand? I mean, how do we, I mean, is there a lack of support or is there a lack of attention? Where does it stand?
Well, there's a lack of attention because, like I said, most people just don't even know that this happened. But everybody that I've told this about, I mean, it was a Marine on my staff, Mike Devin, who came to me just a year ago and said, "Did you know?" And I said, "No, we've got to fix this." Whenever I tell people about this, they're shocked, they're appalled, and they want to fix it. The beauty of the GI Bill is it didn't just reward veterans, it built generational wealth. Because you know that if you go to college, your kids are much more likely to go to college. If you own a home, your kids are much more likely to own homes. So what this bill does is it restores benefits to the descendants, the direct descendants of World War II veterans, because of course, sadly, most of these Black World War II veterans died before they ever realized the benefits that they were owed by the U.S. government.
What's your thoughts on a day like today when, we remember the horrors of what this day means 80 years ago, but we don't, like you said, a lot of people don't even know about what you're trying to do because the political arena is full of so much garbage.
Well, on the one hand, I'm very proud to be in a country that does, by and large, value its veterans. And I think that the way I was treated after coming home from 4 tours in Iraq, which was very well, was in many ways built on the backs of so many Vietnam veterans who were treated poorly. But we've learned that lesson. I think America now values veterans the way we did back in World War II. But just saying that is not enough. We've got to continue investing in veterans. We've got to recognize them for their sacrifice that made all of this possible. And yes, too often this gets lost in the political junk that's going on across the street here. But at the same time, I know in Americans' hearts, they believe in this. They believe in doing right by veterans. And they believe in fixing this injustice, even if, like we said in the op-ed, this may not be our generation that caused the injustice, but we can be the generation that fixes it.
Do you have bipartisan support?
We just introduced the bill, so we don't have any support. I chose Jim Clyburn to be my first co-sponsor because he obviously is such an iconic leader in today's Congress. But we're going to start the work tonight and tomorrow to get people on board on both sides of the aisle, because this absolutely is something that every American should want to support.
Okay, so make me a promise. Come back, keep me posted, and hopefully it's something that is sort of that rare bird that garners bipartisan support and is signed into law. We'll stay on it with your help. Congressman Seth Moulton, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Okay, pause it right there. All right. All right, Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts. Okay, pause it right there. Okay. Very quickly here, if we look at this article here from history.com that I talked about how the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans. It's an excellent article. We talked about it back November 16th, and I've done a presentation on this topic also, but there's a section that talks about fear of Black advancement. Fear of Black advancement. When lawmakers began drafting the GI Bill in 1944, some Southern Democrats feared that returning Black veterans would use public sympathy for veterans to advocate against Jim Crow laws. To make sure the GI Bill largely benefited white people, the Southern Democrats drew on tactics they had previously used to ensure that the New Deal helped under President Roosevelt helped as few Black people as possible. During the drafting of the law, the chair of the House Veterans Committee, Mississippi Congressman John Rankin, played hardball and insisted that the program be administered by individual states instead of the federal government. He got his way, and what this allowed was that in the southern states, for the white supremacists in the southern states to discriminate largely against the African-American World War II veterans. The GI Bill's effect on Black veterans: from the start, Black veterans had trouble securing the GI Bill benefits. Some could not access benefits because they had not been given an honorable discharge, and a much larger number of Black veterans were discharged dishonorably than their white counterparts. Veterans who did qualify could not find facilities that delivered on the bill's promise. Veterans who did qualify could not find facilities that delivered on the bill's promise, largely because of discrimination in institutions and colleges, universities, things like this. Black veterans in a vocational training program at a segregated high school in Indianapolis were unable to participate in activities related to plumbing, electricity, and printing because adequate equipment was only available to white students. Read this full article here. This deals with history and a maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources. And politics is the legal distribution of wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. It was public policy that put us in this predicament. It's going to be public policy that brings us out of this predicament. Okay, very quickly here, I want to go to this next topic here because we're running out of time. So I was reading through articles like I do every day, a number of articles here. Axios on HBO, Axios.com, Axios, the news outlet, they did an interview with Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina. Clyburn predicts Dems will get around filibuster on voting rights. Okay, now we know that the filibuster was broken, actually dealing with the debt ceiling. Okay, and also there was a bill that failed in the Senate being pushed by Senator Mike Lee, dealing with the vaccine mandate. It was against the vaccine mandate. Clyburn predicts Dems will get around filibuster on voting rights. Okay, and this is from I think this is from December 12th. House Majority Whip James Clyburn of South Carolina told Axios on HBO he expects Senate Democrats will find a way to get around the filibuster to pass federal voting rights legislation. He said it may require some jujitsu, but that's not beyond the Senate to do that, he said. He said they'll come up with some way to get around it. He said we had better come up with some way to get around it because this democracy is teetering on collapse. This democracy is teetering on collapse. You just saw that today the House committee, the January 6th committee recommended former Representative Mark Meadows be held in contempt. Okay. And it's going to be, they're going after, there's going to be a lot of people they're going after. January 6th committee recommends Mark Meadows face contempt charge. The House is expected to vote as soon as Tuesday on whether to ask the Justice Department to prosecute Meadows, who was a House member before he joined the Trump administration. Okay. Now, the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act are both stalled in the Senate, and Republicans killed the Democrats for the People Act in the Senate last summer. Representative James Clyburn, the number 3 Democrat in the House of Representatives, said we will find a way to get these voting rights bills passed. Now, we're going to talk about this some more on tomorrow's show. Also, now there's a small group of Senate Democrats, including Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, who have been huddling to discuss rule changes that could help pass voting rights without Republican support, but not end the filibuster. So that's something big as well. They were talking about that on MSNBC today. We'll talk about this some more on tomorrow's show. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to talk a little bit about the Houston Riot of 1917, where you had Black World War I veterans executed. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We're kind of forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay, let me go to this next. Let me go to this next piece here. This is from. We ran out of time on our Sunday show because we had a jam-packed Sunday show, and I did not get a chance to get to this topic. So I want to squeeze this in because tomorrow's show is going to be packed also. So this takes place during World War I. We talked about this some in I didn't get a chance to talk about it in the class on Saturday because we talked about World War I in our class this past Saturday. December 11th, 1917. December 11th, 1917. Black soldiers a bill to suspend part of the First Amendment. That's not going to happen. To change to alter the U.S. Constitution, a bill has to pass both the House and the Senate by 2/3 majority vote, and then pass 3/4 of the state legislatures by 2/3 majority vote. Also, it's not happening. Okay, so we have to look at the process to ratify and to amend the U.S. Constitution. If you want to change anything in the U.S. Constitution, that calls for the ratification of an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which is a very extensive process. It involves not just the House of Representatives, but also the state legislatures. December 11th, 1917, Black soldiers executed for Houston Riot. Okay, now, the primary cause of the Houston Riot was the habitual brutality of the white police officers of Houston in the treatment of colored people. The Crisis Magazine, November 1917. Actually, I think we did talk about this in class Saturday. I taught 2 classes Saturday, so I don't remember. But I think we did talk about it Saturday in class. On December 11th, 1917, 13 African-American soldiers were hanged. December 11th, 1917, 13 African-American soldiers were hanged just outside of San Antonio, Texas, for alleged participation in the Houston Riot or Mutiny in August of 1917. All right. Now, the Houston Riot was started after a case of police brutality. The Houston Riot was started after a case of police brutality as described by the Paris, Texas NAACP. The Paris, Texas NAACP said at noon on August 23rd, 1917, police dragged an African-American woman from her home and arrested her for public drunkenness. Okay. A soldier from the camp asked what was going on and was beaten and arrested as well. When Corporal Charles Baltimore, who's African-American and an MP, military police, when he learned of the arrest, he went to the police station to investigate. Okay, Corporal Charles Baltimore was beaten, then shot at as he was chased away. Rumors soon reached the camp that Corporal Charles Baltimore had been killed, which was not true. He was shot at. He wasn't killed, and he was beaten. He wasn't killed. Rumors soon reached the camp that Corporal Charles Baltimore had been killed and that a white mob was approaching. Soldiers armed themselves and began their march toward the city. Now, a riot ensued, leaving 16 white people dead, including 5 police officers. 4 African-American soldiers also died. Now, the Army held 3 court-martials following the Houston Riot of 1917 and found 110 African-American soldiers guilty. 19 African-American soldiers were executed, and 63 received life sentences in federal prison. 2 white soldiers faced court-martial, but they were released. 2 white soldiers faced court-martial, but they were released. No white civilians were brought to trial. Now, the names of the 13 African-American soldiers who were executed, they were hanged on December 11th, 1917, were Sergeant William C. Nesbitt, Corporal Larson J. Brown, Corporal James Wheatley, Corporal Jesse Moore, Corporal Charles Baltimore, who was the MP. He was executed as well. Private William Breckinridge, Private Thomas C. Hawkins, Private Carlos Snodgrass, Private Ira B. Davis, Private James Devine, Private Frank Johnson, and Private Rosalie W. Young, and Private Pat McWhorter. Now, these are a few pictures of the soldiers who received life sentences. They were not executed, but they received life sentences. Okay, so check out this piece here, and there's some more. I was looking at some articles on the Houston Riot. You can look at more information on that. But check this piece out from the Zen Education Project. December 11th, 1917, Black soldiers executed for a Houston riot, and this was during World War II. I'm sorry, this is during World War I. World War I, 1914 to 1918. Okay, and for that bill, you can go to congress.gov and look at the bill, just like the other bills that I tell you about. They're all at congress.gov. It's in the 2021 is the 2021 version of the bill, which is the 117th Congress. The Sergeant Isaac Woodard. Actually, you can just look at the when I looked at it on congress.gov, I just searched for GI Bill Restoration Act 2021. Okay, this right here. You can just go to congress.gov. You can search for all these bills. You can read them and you can see who voted for the bill, who sponsored the bill. You can track what position it's in. You can track the progress of the bill. So the bill was introduced, sponsored, Representative Seth Moulton. Has 26 co-sponsors right now. HR 5905, 117th Congress. Okay, so they have information here. They have, you can look at all the actions on the bill. They have, what was I looking at earlier? Clicked on all actions. Go here. Compact view, new oldest, action overview, all actions. It's in the House. There's a Senate version that's being introduced by Senator Raphael Warnock. There's a Senate version being introduced by Senator Raphael Warnock. Let me see. I looked at the co-sponsors of the bill. All actions introduced. Where is? Here, and then it shows the co-sponsors of the bill, and it shows where they're from. The first co-sponsor was Representative James Clyburn. But you all can research this and other bills as well. No, doesn't look like any Republicans have signed on to the bill either. All right, so check that out. Let's see here. Okay, African American business owners, post the name of your business here in the thread of the broadcast. Email us at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Our current promotion: buy 1 month, get 2 months free. We'll post information here. Take a 30-second and 60-second commercial, put into the audio podcast of our shows, but also to the rebroadcast of our shows as well, the videos of our shows. Also, we rebroadcast on our social media platforms. Okay, so email us at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Now, for all the people that say dumbass shit like no sign bills for Native Black, B1, FBA, 80, all this nonsense, go read these bills and look and see which bills Republicans vote for. Overwhelmingly, the bills that are beneficial to African Americans, Republicans vote against. Overwhelmingly, like if you actually read, people don't read. They don't go research none of this stuff. If you actually look and see who votes for the bills and who signs on to vote for bills, signs on to support them, who actually votes for the bills, overwhelmingly Republicans keep voting against bills that are beneficial to us. So you keep playing around if you want to. Let's see. Everything from the American Rescue Plan to the Build Back Better Act, all those bills. Go to congress.gov. All right. And then actually look and see how many Republicans vote for these bills that are beneficial to African Americans. You see, overwhelmingly, they keep voting against these bills. So you keep playing around if you want to. All right. These are people just stuck on stupid. Okay, so go to congress.gov because people like to talk but don't do no damn research. Okay, that was the December 11th, 1917, Black soldiers executed for Houston. All right. If you like this type of information, also you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. It's just like people keep talking about reparations, but no Republicans support reparations. No Republicans. I mean, you go look at HR 40 at congress.gov. Only people that support HR 40 are Democrats. No Republicans support reparations. So most of these people talking about reparations can't even realistically tell you how to get what it is they say they want. And 9 times out of 10, they're not even making legal arguments for reparations, which is part of the problem. We've dealt with that here before. Most of these arguments ain't even legal arguments for reparation. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution lays the foundation for a legal argument, which is why the international transatlantic slave trade was outlawed March 2nd, 1807. That goes back to the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. All the Africans that were brought to this country from January 1st, 1808 through July 1860, when the Clotilda came into Alabama, all that was illegal because the U.S. Congress had abolished the international transatlantic slave trade. You have to understand history and law first before you start talking about reparations. This is part of the problem. People are trying to people are going to lawmakers making moral arguments about reparations as opposed to legal arguments about reparations. And you're not structuring a legal argument to defend a legal challenge in the judicial branch of government, which are the courts. This is why in 1841, the U.S. Supreme Court case of the Amistad slave ship, if you actually understand what happened, and if you saw the movie Amistad, you actually understand what happened. The reason why they were set free is because, one, it violated all the international treaties at the time. Because you go to archives.gov and actually do research. I've researched the Amistad slave ship case. It deals with law and it deals with treaties. The reason why they were set free is because the international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished and it was illegal for the ship to come into the U.S. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that it was illegal for that ship to even come into the U.S. And they ruled that they were never slaves. So go read this here, because people don't do research. I listen to what people say. I can tell what they haven't read. History.com, March 2nd, 1807, Congress abolishes the African slave trade. Now, it was still legal to own slaves within the U.S. in states where it had not already been abolished, but it was illegal to bring Africans into the country to sell them as slaves or to own them as slaves. That was illegal. The international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished, and the U.S. entered into treaties with other European nations to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade, because Great Britain abolished the international transatlantic slave trade in 1807. It went into effect in 1807 in Great Britain. It went into effect in 1808 in the U.S. All right. So, Fly Girl, if you ask me who should you vote for, go to Congress. As I said numerous times before, go to congress.gov. All these bills people keep talking about, especially ones they don't understand, all these bills people keep talking about, look and see who votes for the bill. At the end of the day, you can only vote for your member of the House of Representatives and your member of the U.S. Senate at the federal level. I'm not talking about state representatives. You got to look at bills, look at how your state reps vote. Okay, look at how your city council votes. At the end of the day, for House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, you can only vote for the member whose district you live in. For the House of Representatives, you can only vote for one member of the House of Representatives, the member whose district you live in. You can only vote for two U.S. senators, the two U.S. senators that are from your state. If you don't live in West Virginia or Arizona, you can't vote against Senator Joe Manchin or Senator Kristen Sinema. And they're not even up for re-election in 2024. That's what a lot of people don't even know because they don't do research. They're not even up for re-election. They're not up for re-election in 2022. They come up for re-election in 2024. So if you're a member of the House of Representatives keeps voting for bills that you advocate for, vote them. You need to vote them back into office, because if they get replaced, most likely they get replaced by a Republican. Go look at how Republicans vote on these bills. They consistently vote against them and obstruct the bills. This requires strategy, not hashtags. This requires strategy and research, not hashtags. For the U.S. Senate, you can only vote for two U.S. senators. At congress.gov, you can look at these bills, and the bills that are voted on in the Senate, you can see how your U.S. senator votes. If your U.S. senator keeps voting for bills that you advocate for, why the hell would you let them get voted out of office and get replaced by somebody who's going to vote against your own interests? That's stupid. That doesn't even make sense. Okay, so a lot of people are just putting this nonsense out here to elevate their social media platform, but they're not explaining any of this to our people, because most of them don't know it because they don't do research. Okay, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and keep running game on you over and over and over again is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. This is our official Cash App account, $ the TheAHNShow through Cash App. When you go to it, it says Michael, and it shows my picture there. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. All right. So you can support us there and on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We're here 6 days a week. And be sure to download the iHeartRadio app. You can Listen to the podcast on my shows there. We're on 10 different audio podcast platforms. We're on Castbox, Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, FM Player. Just search for the African History Network show. All right, we have to get out of here. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.